All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly wild chain of events where a petty modern internet dispute accidentally unearthed a deadly 18th century naval tragedy. We're going to look at how a simple digital argument can serve as a profound mirror reflecting centuries of history, bureaucracy, and human nature. So, how exactly does a standard 48-hour YouTube copyright strike get treated like a literal act of war? I mean, usually when a creator gets a copyright claim online, it's just an annoyance, right? You dispute it, you wait it out, you move on. But in this case, no way. The response was entirely different. It was elevated immediately to the level of high-stakes international conflict. And to understand why, we really got to look at the two individuals involved. Our two combatants are operating in an asymmetric narrative clash, and they're adopting some highly specific personas. On one side, we have American legal engineer Kyle McLean Smith, who steps into the self-ascribed role of the architect. On the other side is Damien Walter, a British sci-fi critic who openly describes his own background as a former Special Forces librarian, someone who actually ran literacy projects in low-income UK cities. So we have this incredible clash of projected identities, the systems-building American architect versus the institutional British librarian. Now, the language Smith uses here is absolutely dramatic. He doesn't just call the copyright strike unfair, he maps it directly onto a massive framework of geopolitical control. He literally calls it an apostasy against American sovereignty and labels his opponent a Wizard of Oz parasite. I mean, wow. Smith views the Republic as a host infected by an imperial parasite, framing his digital actions as a modern-day defense of the First Amendment. He is actively drawing a historical parallel here. By equating Walter's institutional legal threat with British intellectual colonialism, Smith positions his own resistance as the modern equivalent of the spirit of 1776. For him, it's no longer just an internet fight. It is a full-blown battle for the digital sovereignty of the mind. Which brings us to Section 1, Anatomy of an Insult. To grasp the true weight of Smith's counterattacks, we have to look at the exact weapon he chose. He began aggressively trolling Walter by repeatedly calling him a limey. Now, today, limey might just sound like a playful, kind of old-fashioned joke, but historically, it was intended as a derogatory label aimed directly at the British, and it serves as our trapdoor into history. This seemingly arbitrary nationalist slur was actually born out of a desperate global fight against a horrifying disease. Back in the mid-19th century, Americans and Australians started mocking British sailors by calling them lime juicers, which quickly got shortened to limeys. But why were British sailors drinking lime juice to begin with? Well, to answer that, we have to talk about the terrifying reality of ocean travel a few centuries ago. Let's jump into Section 2, the scurvy clinical trials. Okay, dropping back to 1747, we find ourselves dealing with scurvy. This was a massive occupational hazard of oceanic travel that claimed an estimated 2 million sailors between the 16th and 18th centuries, and the symptoms were absolutely gruesome. We're talking skin bruising, teeth falling out, and old wounds physically reopening. Entire fleets could be decimated. For example, in 1740, Commodore George Anson lost around 1,400 out of his 1,900 men during a voyage, mostly to scurvy. It was a mass killer caused by what we now know is vitamin C deficiency. Honestly, that would have been super helpful to know before millions perished. Enter Scottish naval surgeon James Lind. Aboard the HMS Salisbury, Lind conducted the world's first randomized clinical trial on 12 sick sailors. He divided them into 6 distinct treatment groups. They all got the exact same diet, but he varied their daily supplements. Some got cider, others drank actual seawater. Gross. Some got a delightful-sounding elixir of sulfuric acid, and 2 incredibly lucky sailors received 2 oranges and 1 lemon a day. And the results brilliantly illustrate the undeniable cure. While the other sailors remained terribly sick, the 2 guys given citrus fruits were practically ready to return to duty in under a week. It was a miraculous breakthrough. But get this. It would take nearly 50 years for the British Navy to officially implement Lind's findings fleet-wide. Which leads us to Section 3, the tragic lime downgrade. You would think finding a cure for a mass killer would be the end of the story, right? Nope, the British Empire bureaucratically dismantled it. Sourcing 50,000 gallons of juice annually during an 1804 war with Spain was a total logistical nightmare. The Mediterranean lemons they relied on became way too hard to get, so the Admiralty swapped them out for limes grown in their own British colonies in the Caribbean. I mean, sure, it looked great on a spreadsheet. But the fatal flaw in this colonial supply chain switch was that nobody understood the underlying chemistry. They didn't know what vitamin C actually was, so they had absolutely no idea that limes contained significantly less of it than lemons, and far less than oranges. They just figured acid was acid. And to make matters infinitely worse, they had to make this juice last for months at sea. By mechanically processing it to preserve it, like storing it in wooden barrels, letting it touch copper, and actually cooking it down, they were literally boiling the life-saving vitamin C right out of an already deficient fruit. They systematically destroyed their own cure. The tragic result is that the empire unwittingly destroyed the cure just to serve an imperial supply chain. Scurvy crept right back into the Royal Navy. The institution prioritized logistics over the actual efficacy of the medicine, and it resulted in totally unnecessary death. Yet, the nickname coined by their rivals, Limey, stuck around forever, leaving us with this wild linguistic relic of their hubris. Let's look at Section 4, the Limey Mirror. Let's plunge right back into our modern conflict. When Smith hurled this historical insult at Walter, he decided to actually research the origins of the word limey to sharpen his attacks. But as he read up on the history of scurvy, something entirely unexpected happened. While reading about the gruesome symptoms of scurvy, the fatigue, the lethargy, the physical deterioration, Smith held up a mirror to himself and realized a terrifying truth. He was actively exhibiting the symptoms of scurvy himself. I mean, no way, right? The insult he used to mock a British critic had just become a literal medical diagnosis for his own failing health. But here is where it gets amazing. Rather than letting the bureaucratic machine of his own poor digital-era diet destroy him, Smith took immediate action. He went straight to a local Walmart, bought a massive bottle of vitamin C pills, and literally forged his internet fire into a tool for healing. Within days, his symptoms vanished. This right here is the ultimate alchemy of this bizarre story. What started as unhinged internet rage and a petty copyright strike dispute transmuted into a literal lifesaver. By digging into the history of a geopolitical insult just to win an online argument, Smith accidentally cured his own 18th century pirate disease. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought about the weight of the words we use online. Our digital arguments might feel fleeting, but our language carries the ghost of history. So the next time you hurl a careless insult in a comment section, ask yourself, what history are you invoking and what might it reveal about you? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and stay curious.